You missed a show yesterday to call some JUCO basketball games.
Man, I'm proud of calling JUCO basketball games, and play-by-play is fun, man. You shared all your play-by-play stories from on my show this past Thursday. That was hilarious. But yeah, I actually had a puppy in my broadcast booth. I'll post a photo tomorrow and tag you in it.
Was it your wife's puppy?
No, no. So someone just brought their dogs to the basketball game, and I was like, man, I'm in heaven. But yeah, Blake, great weekend. Obviously, watching Jayden Daniels get it done versus the Florida Gators, and before we talk about all of that, on the SEC channel, I actually just did a deep dive on Tennessee versus Missouri, right? And one thing just kind of clicked when I was watching this Missouri defense. They're very good. They're a very, very good defense. And they've only had one bad game this year, Blake. And who was that? Who was their bad game against?
LSU.
Exactly. So that is just another data point as to what Jayden Daniels was able to do and all the Herculean plays he made in that game. It feels like that game happened BC, right? It feels like it was that long ago.
It feels like a decade ago that game happened.
Right, and that might not even be a top 3 Jayden game this year. I mean, that just shows you how unbelievable he's been and how good Missouri has been this year.
Well, it's definitely maybe from like a statistical standpoint, not his 3 best. I think it's definitely top 3 because he was hurt and he came in and he won you the football.
So it might be number 1 if you factor that in. But the point still remains the same. There's just not many games that the McCarthys, the Bo Nixes, the Michael Penix of the world that have come close to even that one. If you ask me,
he's got a top 5 strength of schedule.
Yeah,
like people don't realize that. Yeah, LSU hopefully is going to be 9-3 at the end of the year. What we won't talk about is like, hey man, you wanted to know what would happen when Brian Kelly came to the SEC and had to face like the gauntlet. Well, now you know. The last 2 years ago, I don't want to count my eggs before they hatch, okay? Because I don't like counting games. But the likelihood is that he's going to be 9-3 both years, and he's going to have to continue to build to get to that elite level that he talks about. Here's the frustrations that I have, though. Okay, I want to talk about the game that he had, meaning Jayden against Florida. Carter, how are you? This is why I don't think that the staff that Brian Kelly has put together is like everybody says, oh my God, it's so bad. Look what they're doing offensively. It would be one thing. Yes, Jayden is phenomenal. Okay, like phenomenal. Carter, they've got really good wide receivers. They got a really good tight end, in my opinion, that's not getting the credit that he deserves. Some of the blocking that he's doing, I think he's done very well. Their offensive line is a Joe Ward semifinalist, Joe Moore Award semifinalist. Like, they're really good offensively. But, Carter, let me tell you something. I've been doing the Ruffino and Joe show like, you have to focus and watch film on other teams that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Dude, we might be the most undisciplined team that I watch defensively.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. Now,
in Florida, Carter, you know what they did? Tell me if I'm wrong here. They went full TDP on you in the second half in reference to calls. Now, they didn't have the performance. They were running gap power the whole time.
Yeah.
The whole time, gap power. And they didn't have an answer. That frustrates the shit out of me.
Yeah, it should. It should. You made a really good point about the offense. It was very good to see everybody on offense play at a high level, right? Like Jayden doing that really shouldn't shock anybody. And Malik Neighbors having an elite game. They've been elite in almost every game this year, right? It was good seeing BTJ have a bounce back game. It was good seeing that offensive line play lights out. Good seeing Charles Turner have, the biggest change from one week to the next.
He was so good, dude.
Yeah.
He was so good on Saturday.
And like you mentioned on my show, the snaps were perfect. And he deserved SEC Offensive Lineman of the Week after, the tough performance from the week before. So that's all good. Will Campbell was lights out. That's really good. everybody was lights out offensively.
Josh Williams.
Josh Williams, man. Simultaneous. You love those hustle plays.
He can play. If I had the effort, if every player on this team played with the effort of Josh Williams, we would never lose. We would not have lost a game.
Yeah, Blake, my favorite thing about him is that he plays with absolute no fear. Like, and that's how you have to play running back. You have to play like you're the biggest, baddest dude. And it's a mentality, honestly. And, him flattening people that are bigger than him 2 times in a game is really freaking crazy. And of course, he did that last year versus Alabama. So, I mean, the heart of a lion really, or the heart of a tiger, he's just that great. But to your point about the defense, Blake, it was really bad. And if Florida had a better quarterback than Graham Mertz, and Graham is not bad. Like we said last week, he is a middle tier SEC starter. He is an SEC caliber starting quarterback. But like he missed a lot. So it actually should have been worse. And obviously we can't fit the run. It's been a problem all season long. We've not been able to adjust it. Obviously, Brian Kelly has hammered this point home that the championship level depth defensively just isn't there. And you see that. Now, there were some bright spots. I think Jacoby and Guillory had one of his better games, if you will. But Blake, it's still tough to watch. It
His
really is.
best game is an average game elsewhere in the SEC.
Right. And that's your DT4 in theory, right? So it's tough, right? Like, and one thing Brian Kelly mentioned in the press conference on Monday is, the defensive line rotation is relatively deep, right? They brought in a bunch of transfers who have Power 5 playing experience elsewhere, and it's really not mattered. It's everybody's just been able to run on us. And what's very interesting about that, Blake, is a pass is a more productive play than a run. It's just simple. A pass averages more yards per play than a run, right? But the running game defensively has been so unbelievably bad, Blake. It comes down to gap integrity. It comes down to just being physical, and it's a problem. It's a really, really, really big problem.
I don't blame that you don't have a D-line coach. Having a D-line coach, Carter, has nothing to do with them missing and not filling the gaps that they need to have. John Jancic is not, in my opinion, John Jancic is not bad enough of a coach that he's not telling them what gaps to hit.
I overall agree with you, Blake. I do. And look, I've been very sympathetic to having 4 defensive line coaches in the last 4 seasons. It's that assistant coaches move from job to job. So you should never criticize an assistant coach going somewhere else, right? That's very common in the industry. 4 in 4 seasons is a lot, but Blake, you are right. You're unequivocally right. You've got to be better. You've just got to be better in that front 7, especially considering it was a 20 freaking year anniversary of the 03 team being there, which
I know
is one of the
never.
Yeah,
ever.
Right. Yeah, that was some of the best, run fitting, you'll ever see. And it helped that they had, Michaela Williams and those guys, Spears. But still, we've got
that defensive line. That might be the best defensive line we've ever had.
It probably is. And you're just not getting it for whatever the reason may be. I think some of it, Blake, comes down to just understanding your job on defense is part of a bigger ecosystem, right? Offensive players are so smart now that as a defense, you really have got to play together, and you've got to play smart. You've got to play physical. And for some reason, whether it's the message from Matt House, whether it's the scheme for Matt House, whatever the case may be, it's not been good. And look, Florida's rushing attack is really good. Etienne and Johnson are both NFL level backs.
But Carter, they're in the 70s in rushing yards a game, though.
Yeah. So
they had not been good.
Yeah.
The truth is, they were the worst statistical run team per game that you faced all year.
Yeah. I mean, it really is bad, Blake. It really, really, really is. And some of it, I truly do think is guys trying to do too much. And I don't. Once again, it's to the point where, obviously I do the film study every week, and I get this question: why is this so bad? But like, it is so bad that I don't know all the answers. Nobody does. If it's just this bad,
hitting gaps, and that's a massive problem. They're getting pushed around. That is a massive problem.
They are.
I think you've gotten better at times in the secondary. You got 2 safeties playing boundary, and I thought they played well. I thought Ashton Stamps didn't play bad. I mean, they're getting better. I see the progression that Brian Kelly talks about there. Look, they got a lot that they got to fix in the offseason. A lot that they got to fix, and it's more than just coaching. I think they got to change some personnel in that too. Carter, let's talk about something positive because we just got done talking about something negative. I know that Joe Burrow, and look, this might be recency bias for me, okay? I know that Joe Burrow had a 7-touchdown game against Oklahoma. To that day, it was the best performance by an LSU player ever that I'd seen, okay? Because of the magnitude, the playoff, LSU getting over that hump, it was unmatched until Saturday. I'm really contemplating in my mind if what I saw on Saturday was the best overall football performance I've ever seen.
I agree. But in terms of sheer production, I do agree. Yes, Burrow from start to finish was better than Jayden, and that's not going to change, right?
And look, can I lay some work really quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not comparing the two. Burrow is always going to be 1A, whatever you want to list it as. I'm not saying that. I am talking about an individual performance. Everybody says, well, Joe had 7 touchdowns. Guys, he ran for 200. He did something that nobody in college football's history did. And it's not like, Carter, Florida was 46 in total defense going into that game.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on that. I really have. If it's in terms of just sheer production, if it's that
definitely regular season. I don't remember seeing anything like that in a regular season.
Right. Now, once again, your major point isn't to do the comparison. You're just trying to share how special it was, right?
Just the game. The game, right.
Yeah. So my thing is if Oklahoma had been semi-competitive, Joe would have thrown for 10 touchdowns. They would have. I mean, that's just all there is to it, man.
You want to hear a counter argument?
Yeah, let's hear it.
If LSU's defense could actually make a stop, Jayden might have run from 350.
Right, but the proverbial foot would get off the gas pedal, if you will. Right. So
I think he was trying to score 70.
Maybe so. But your point still remains the same. It is one of the most special things we've ever seen.
No doubt.
And you obviously when you look at the best quarterbacks of the modern era, most people will say as far as a single season is concerned, it's Joe Burrow and Cam Newton. But Jayden, man, he is in like the Manziel tier of just greatness. Now, as great as he was versus Florida, Blake, this has always been the case with college football, right? Especially with college football fans. How you finish is so important, okay? Obviously, they're going to light up their opponent this weekend.
Georgia State secondary, Carter, is one of the worst in the country.
125th. I saw your stat earlier, man.
Yeah.
What the Texas A&M game is going to be so important because voters, there's a lot of voters who probably don't follow everyone as closely as we do. So what does a casual voter do? Well, they'll take a look at the win-loss column. They'll take a look at the teams in the playoff. Obviously, our win-loss column and the teams in the playoffs aren't as good as the other guys, which is a stupid argument. You should just look individually at the player. Jayden, unquestionably, whether you look at total yards, explosive plays, EPA per play, even if you want to look at fantasy points, anything you want to look at, he's by far the best, okay? But your final game is so unfreaking believably crucial. And you got to keep in mind, some voters do turn in their I believe, okay? Correct me if I'm wrong.
There are people that have already turned in their ballot.
Right. So some have already done it. Some might wait till the championship weekend or whatever the case may be. So the final 2 weeks are important. And look, let's just say Jayden doesn't have like a Jayden game versus Texas A&M. All those other quarterbacks and players still do have that extra weekend of data, right? And how you end matters, right? You only remember the end of a movie. You only remember really a team's last game. Most voters, and that's why I wanted to start this segment, Blake, talking about the Missouri game, because it's going to be hard for any quarterback who is in this Heisman category to have a game as good as Jayden's game versus Missouri, right? But we tend to forget about that because, we only remember the last thing. So Jayden's going to have, 2 spectacular games to really, distance him and make sure it's beyond reasonable doubt, to the point where these stupid casuals won't just keep saying, well, look at the win-loss record. I'm so tired of hearing that. So, these next 2 weeks are going to be crucial. But to your point, the Florida game was, I felt it was the best decision for me to go to that game. I was glad I got to witness one of, these special performances I've ever seen in any sport, really.
You know what's funny too, Carter, when they say that, you literally gave the award to a guy that had 3 losses last year.
Oh, I know.
They were 10-4, just like we were. He literally won the Heisman and had 3 losses. Okay, so don't spare me with that comparison. And here's the truth. You want to hear a crazy stat? USC strength of schedule last year, guess what it was?
What was it?
96th.
96. And Jayden doesn't.
Which means the last 2 weeks, even playing Tulane, moved them out of the hundreds.
And Jayden doesn't paint expletives on his fingernails, right?
Very, very true.
And this is one thing I'll add, okay? I don't like to do the holier than thou argument. I don't, because, it gets slippery slope with people's personalities. But Jayden is just an outstanding guy, right? Now, I don't know him personally. None of us are around him every single day. But there is not a single person who you've seen say a bad word about him. He's got a big smile. I saw
fans do it all last year.
Yeah, I mean, look.
I have 200 tweets bookmarked that I got fired off, ready to go for Heisman Trophy weekend.
Well, let's. I can't wait,
man. Dude, I got so much ammo ready.
And I have a bunch of Jayden should play running back comments as well locked in. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like if we want to get into, because look, if you actually go look at the Heisman Trophy mission statement, okay, the mission statement,
most outstanding player,
does not actually say that. It says the most outstanding player that also pursues with integrity or something a lot like that. Right. So if you want to play that game, okay, the voters should factor in morality and doing the right thing. And what has Jayden done? Only those things, right? When you hear Holly Rowe talking about, hey, LSU had to change their key card policy so Jayden can watch extra film. Jayden playing through scars, his head getting cut up in the last year and then getting a concussion, still going out there for the team and putting his ass on the line for us every single game. Jayden taking some of the most brutal hits you'll ever see a quarterback take. Some of those are on him, but he's tough. He's a good leader. Will Campbell says he doesn't flinch. I mean, you get all these intangible things, and voters, according to the mission statement, are supposed to include that in their repertoire.
Carl, there's going to be a lot of turnover after these guys are gone. I guess as you're here now looking at this team in the season, what are your thoughts? Like, let's just say hypothetically they win Saturday, okay? They go into A&M, a roster that probably is a little bit down. Their head coach just got fired. They're probably looking elsewhere. Let's just say you get that win. You go 9-3. You get to 10 wins after a bowl win. Why does this 10-win season feel really bad? Like, why does it have a bad taste in fans' mouth? Pause.
Yeah, you pulled a Kyle Lowry there. No, why does it feel bad? Because you're more than likely at this point, Blake, it's going to be hard to get in a New Year's Six bowl at this point. I mean,
You would need Georgia and Bama to get in.
Right, and you would need Missouri and a few.
They put you in above Missouri.
If they stay at 2 losses, maybe Missouri.
These bowl games are about money, and they'd pick LSU over the.
I would too, obviously, but if we're looking,
tell me that they wouldn't put LSU in the Sugar Bowl, you crazy.
No, I agree.
They've been wanting to do that for so long.
Hey, that was my first big bowl game I went to, LSU versus Illinois in the Sugar Bowl, the Kirk Kittner game. But to your point, Blake, it does feel like, less than expectations, right? But I would also say this: it's also somewhat common, right? You have a lot of teams that have had transcendent quarterback Heisman years where you're like, dang, if our defense could have made one more stop, or if we could have played, a better game here or there. If
you don't give up 55, if you give up 42 against Ole Miss, you get 2 stops, literally.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of woulda, coulda, shoulda, but the games are the games for a reason, right? And that's a good lesson to every single person that is a fan of your channel, my channel, a fan of this crazy sport that we love, is that it's still a team game. And you've got everyone on this team that, with the portal coming in and out the door, you still got to get people to buy in. You still got to get players to play smart, play fast, play physical. And Blake, quite simply, we just haven't had that. And obviously the biggest concern next year, Blake, is no matter what Garrett Nussmeier does next year, he's not going to be as good as this. It's just a fact. I do love Garrett Nussmeier, but it's just not going to be as good a quarterback play with this. Some of it also is the departure of Malik Neighbors. That is inevitable. Can LSU become more of a team? Can they be a more complete team? Can they not have these lapses with certain position groups for long periods of time?
You're going to have to lean on your O-line, dude. You're going to have to run the football at an alarming rate. Like, can I tell you what's going to happen?
Let's hear it.
You're going to go Tennessee, but in the opposite way. I think you'll be explosive. I think you're going to throw the ball down the field. I think you're more explosive in that regard. You're going to have to run the football at an alarming rate.
Yeah.
You're going to have to pound the rock, dude. Like, they don't have a choice.
You're right. You're right on. They're going to be a far more run-based team next year. That's not to say that they can't, go 5 wide or whatever with Nuss, but you're going to have to run the football a lot more next year.
Your favorite coach got fired over the weekend.
Oh, who is that?
Jimbo.
Man,
you have defended that man to kingdom come.
Who, Jimbo? When have I defended him? Or was that some hashtag sarcasm and I didn't get it? Huh?
You didn't get it. Jimbo gets fired. No, 2 questions. Number 1, does it affect anything with LSU? Obviously it does. What do you think about them spending that much money, though, to tell him not to coach? Look, that's a statement.
Yeah.
It's a statement. Like, hey, dude,
Okay. I think people have overreacted to the buyout amount. Yes, it is absolutely ridiculous. You should never do that. Like, it's a horrible contract. But if he actually would have been successful, the contract would have paid off tenfold, right?
Well, of course, but it didn't. So that's
it didn't. Yeah. So I don't think it's like the absolute most ridiculous thing in the world. I do think this is bad for LSU for this reason, Blake. It's because Jimbo was so bad. If you actually go look at strength of schedule metrics and you compare it to the rest of the SEC West, A&M's schedule was easier than all the other schools in the West because, they became a top 10 recruiter and their cross-division team was South Carolina. So they had the biggest game.
Simple.
Yes. And you got to remember, this wasn't Beamer, South Carolina. This was Will Muschamp, South Carolina. This was bad South Carolina that Jimbo, would have that extra.
Spurrier.
Right. You would have that extra victory every season over everyone in the West that you knew you were going to get because Muschamp sucked, right? So Jimbo had it easier than most schools, right? He had more money. He had obviously one of the biggest NIL pools we have ever seen in the short period of NIL. There was no reason for him to fail this bad, but it was because he was stubborn, and it was because he was overrated to begin with, right? You can go look at the Florida State tenure and see that potentially he was just a Jameis Winston merchant, right? There was other good players around that point.
He had some good quarterbacks now.
Who else outside of Jameis?
Well, I mean, from a college quarterback perspective, I think Manuel was a good college quarterback. I think Ponder was a good college quarterback. I mean, they were winning 10 and they were first-round picks for a reason. Now, it doesn't – and neither was Jameis, but a lot of quarterbacks don't pan out. Look at USC. Doesn't make Matt Leinart didn't suck any less.
Oh, no, I don't.
So
I don't disagree, but I don't think anyway, that's in the review. I don't think Manuel or Ponder were ever really that good but that's a different story for a different day. Okay. The point being is he was bad, and this isn't good for LSU that he's not going to be there anymore because he did suck. He just was bad. Now I understand he beat us at home these last 2 years, and he beat us down pretty bad last year. Very unique circumstance. For the most part, Jimbo Fisher sucking in Texas A&M is a good thing for LSU. And if somebody were to actually go there and get that train moving, knowing that some of our toughest recruiting battles have been with Texas A&M, it will be interesting to see how they hire. Now, once again, it's all going to come down to who they hire. But yeah, Jimbo has been a big failure, and we have been a somewhat small beneficiary of that.
Do you think that they hire a big name, good coach? Do you think they get this right, or is it going to plague? Because look, people won't get this reference because college baseball isn't as massive as college football. They went and got a Jim Schlossnagle who was at TCU who was winning a frick load of games. Now, I know it is different because the salaries are massively different. Buyouts are massively different. You didn't have to spend $78 million in a baseball coaching buyout. I get all that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is I don't think Ross Bjork gets enough credit for some of the hires he's made.
Yeah.
So I don't think that he will get this wrong. Like I don't think that they'll hire another Jimbo. Like if they hire Jimbo today, it's going and getting Dabo.
Yeah, and obviously this next hire is I don't know if they want to go get someone like Jeff Traylor, who of course knows the landscape.
Head coach at UTSA for people who don't know.
Right, and he's been an assistant in the SEC before. But I think they're going bigger, right? I do have a few people in mind that I think would make a lot of sense.
Why is it Lane Kiffin?
Well, that would obviously be my.
I didn't know that was your pick, but I knew when you said that, I was like, he's talking about Lane Kiffin.
Yeah, that would be my number one guy. I do think Lane is still very special, even though you're always going to have to deal with extracurriculars, and I don't know how that fit would work with such a big personality at a school that has, somewhat interesting, rigid traditions, right?
Do you believe Dan Lanning?
No, I think Lanning's going to stay at Oregon. I do. One guy I think that would make the jump that I think would make sense is taking a look at some of these young SEC East coaches, right? What about Elijah Drinkowitz? Or what about Shane Beamer?
Joe, my co-host on Rufino and Joe's brought up Eli Drinkwitz. He does not fit that culture. He would get swallowed whole.
Yeah, and that's why I think Shane Beamer would be a little bit better there if Texas.
They're not going to hire him either. He's too corky. He broke his foot kicking a wall. What do you think he's going to do at A&M?
They need that though.
All right, because I do gotta go here. Let me ask you one last question before I let you go. You ready? Michaela Williams.
Awesome. That's why I wore the Final Four shirt, man. Yeah, obviously she's great. Very humble. Got to know her dad obviously a few months ago. We did a sports card show together, and she's just the best. Big personality. And people got to remember she's traveled the world already playing basketball.
Yeah,
so she has gone up against like really good like Spanish basketball players. So she has seen such a variety of styles and all these different things. And she told me like how much that helped her grow as a player and a person, right? And
first time away from mama and daddy.
Yeah, exactly. And her dad is just awesome. Like he's just an awesome all around, like just leader. So she always mentioned that to me, her family and all that stuff.